Okay, we are live. I am going to now hit the recording. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Healing is War, where we explore the dark side of starting your spiritual journey. On this podcast, we have conversations with spiritual teachers from all over the world, and each episode we delve into a specific topic that you may encounter on your healing journey. The topic today is the death of me, and we have a very special guest, Leticia Francis. Let me tell you a little bit about her. First of all, I discovered her with her work on the Survival Mode Disrupted podcast. She is a trauma informed specialist. She has recovered from a lot of stuff. And to me, she is just a raw, truthful, cutthroat author, speaker. You can just name it, but the gist of it is survival mode disrupted. Hence the title today, The Death of Me, because Leticia, you told me that's one of the topics you do in your keynotes. First of all, what does the topic mean? What does it mean to have a death of you? Because most people are afraid of dying.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. And to your question, the death of me refers to the survival identities that we pick up as a result of experiencing trauma. One of the things that I discovered about myself post writing a memoir, which I'm yet to publish, was I lived in survival mode for more than 2 decades. And a lot of the residual impacts of trauma were unaware to me during the process of my healing and the process of me getting to a place where I was doing more than just surviving. I was actually thriving. And one of the things that I realized along my healing journey was the person who I became in order to survive the things that I've been through. And I've been through molestation, parental abandonment, emotional abandonment. I was abused in a relationship with a man that was more than twice my age from the age of 14. That relationship
Mhm.
ended as a result of me being stabbed. I've had multiple relationships with addicts, which created another dynamic for me. But I became someone who had to survive. And as a result, I picked up a lot of identities along the way. I was a perfectionist. I was an overachiever. I was a hustler. I was the caretaker. I was a chameleon. I was that strong black woman that never cracked. Those identities kept me alive. Let's just keep it real. But in order for me to get to a place where I am now, I'm thriving, I'm giving back, I am doing my best to make an impact on this world, those identities had to die. And there had to be a rebirth, a reinvention that I talk about often when I talk about accident survival mode. And the woman who was focused on survival had to be buried so that I could become someone beyond my trauma. And a lot of times, survivors struggle with getting clarity around their identity.
Mm.
I often hear, I've been through all of this. I don't know who I am now. And I think that that's what I mean when I talk about the death of me. I had to put down this survival identity so that I could be the woman that I am today.
What you were, as you were speaking those words and the 20-year path, what I caught, I could see and feel each of those. It was like you were the strong black woman, then you were this identity, then you were this identity. And it was almost like you had to put on new clothes each time. How did, and then you said you were able to bury all of those identities. Was it one burial or multiple burials? Like, how did this go down with so many identities? How did you go through this process?
I think it started with awareness for me, right? Like I'm gonna pick people pleasing because I think a lot of people can resonate with that, right? When I was growing up and a lot of my 20s and early 30s, I spent a lot of my energy keeping the people around me comfortable. I would say yes when I really meant no. I would do things when I knew that I didn't have time. And that was because I learned very early on that if I make someone uncomfortable or upset them, there will be a consequence. And I learned that through my relationship with my father, right? He taught me over and over that if I didn't do what he wanted me to do, then there will be severe consequences. And that looked like for me, him not talking to me, him cutting me off financially. So as I grew and as I learned, that became a coping mechanism for me. Let me just do what I know will make people happy when I'm silently miserable. So as I came along my healing journey, I actually recognized that that was a survival identity. I had chalked that up to it being my personality. Which it wasn't. It was something that was learned in order for me to cope. And as a result, I had to learn how to set boundaries. And I would say I'm still learning how to set boundaries. I was a people pleaser for 30 years. And now it's very uncomfortable what I'm learning. It's a daily process for me. So was that a separate barrier from me being a perfectionist or the fixer or the strong back woman? Yes and no. I think there is a continual barrier going on with me during my healing process. I don't believe that we get to a place where we're healed. I believe it's a continuous journey. So, yeah, it's an ongoing thing. Let's just set up next to the gravesite and dump it all in there as we heal and continue moving along life's journey.
But there would be nothing actually wrong with that because see, in my work, I'm a death doula.
Mhm.
And so many of us are afraid of death because we see it as an ending, not this cyclical thing, like you said, let's set up next to the grave and keep burying, keep burying. I see that as a celebration because it's letting you know I'm forever transforming. I'm forever learning, working on these boundaries. I'm forever doing this until I get to that deeper level. There's nothing wrong with being a caterpillar because what does a caterpillar do? Go back and refresh, become something new, transformation. That's what in this season here in the United States, the spiders are doing their thing. And we take clues from nature. They're always reforming. They're always burying themselves and coming back again and renewing and refreshing. So to me, that is what we should be doing. There's none of this one and done. I'm out of the survival mode. I dealt with that already. It's no need for me to return. You can't, when we try to approach it in that way, it serves nobody any good, especially us, because we're the number one person on this path, on this healing journey. We have to be willing to say if something is not going right, how am I going to recover? How am I going to fix it? I'm going to restore it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that one thing that you did say is that being able to question ourselves, oftentimes, like we get kind of bogged down in our circumstance and we don't recognize that questions can be our best friend. Instead of asking, like, why is this happening to me? Like, we can reframe that so we can focus on, like, what am I learning through this? And in that, that's where our growth happens, right? We have to get to a place where we're willing to challenge our narratives. We're willing to challenge what we know to be true in order for us to see something different. Um, see something different.
Okay. Yeah, because those questions are what lead to answers. We can even see it right now with the onset of AI. It's the prompting that leads to the best results
Hmm.
just with our healing, our spiritual path. When we prompt and we give the best question, what does this mean? Why did I act this way today? What's going on with me? Instead of just accepting it, ask
Hmm.
a question and ask a valuable, loaded question. I would say people would always call me, you too deep. You better be deep. If you're trying to do the death of me, you better dig deep because you want
Absolutely.
to bury that thing.
Absolutely. I have a membership, and one of the things that we focused on this month was just being able to get to a point where you can recognize the patterns, right? Like a lot of times we show up, as I said earlier, I chalked up a lot of my survival identities to being part of my personality because I just was unaware. And when we can get to a point where we can recognize patterns in our behaviors and what the triggers are, then we get to a place where now we are in a position to do something about it. I know you catch the podcast often, and you've heard me talk about awareness 100 times, but I talk about awareness as almost a lighthouse, right? It gives us the opportunity to see what's in front of us, see what's around us, and it also gives us the ability to make a decision that will stop us from being shipwrecked or stop us from repeating constant cycles in our lives if we take it back to just the self-awareness. And it's key to be able to get to a place where we can see ourselves in our truth, not the reality or the perception that we try to present the world. See ourselves in our truth. And in seeing ourselves in that truth, being able to challenge ourselves, right? Like, girl, what are you really doing today? Be your own best friend, right? Like imagine, your friends coming to you talking about what's going on in her life, and you heard something that, makes your hair go to the side. You're not just gonna sit there. You're gonna be like, girl, what are you talking about to me today?
Exactly.
And we need to be able to do that to ourselves, like really challenge why we are doing things, why we are showing up in a certain way, especially when there are things about ourselves that we don't necessarily like, but we do it because we've always done it, right? Like I was an angry person. I responded every day in anger.
Hmm.
I didn't like it, but that was how I learned to cope with my circumstance. And I remember one day asking myself, why am I this angry?
Mm.
Like, what about this circumstance has got
What
me
was the
pissed off
answer though? What was
that
the
much?
answer?
And I recognized that I wasn't angry. I was
Oh.
actually heavily disappointed. And in that, I recognized that my response wasn't aligned with how I was feeling. So I had to learn to pause to be able to question what's really going on underneath the surface, which then allowed me to show up in a space much different. Instead of the go-to volcano of anger, I learned to be able to express my heart. I learned to be able to express my disappointment, you know? And part of me didn't know how to express at all because I learned as a young child you don't express your emotions to people. So all of that is growth, but all of that in part was allowing a part of me to die in order so that I can see a new response and a new outcome as a result.
Hmm. I'm just letting that sit there. A new outcome. Because you've spoken a lot about how we will take these identities, whether it's people pleasing is the main one you addressed today. You will take that and see it as a part of your personality. Why did you see it part of your personality, and why do you think other people do that? Because the people listening today, they might just think, oh, I'm a people pleaser, or oh, I'm a perfectionist, I always have to get things right. I was that way since the age of 3. What led to that being a segment of your identity, or you even thinking it was your personality?
I thought it was my personality because I recognized that it was something that as long as I could remember, I had done. And it took me working with a coach for her to point it out to me. Why? Like I think in that moment I was complaining about having all of this stuff on my plate and I expressed that I couldn't say no. And she said, "Well, why can't you say no?" I said, "Because if I say no, I'll piss this person off, and that's not what I want to do." And she actually called me manipulative. And I looked at her and I said, "I don't think I'm manipulative." So she goes, "You are doing things to ensure that someone else responds to you in a way that you want them to, right? And in doing so, you are abandoning yourself." And I had to sit and think about it. And then I had to go back, like, how long have I been doing this? And it was something that it took me a little while to uncover. I did a lot of journaling around it because I was triggered when she told me I was manipulative. But when I laid it out, and it wasn't, I mean, it's not as bad as I had perceived it in that moment. But when I really stewed on it, I could see where she was coming from. I was doing things against my own will oftentimes to keep someone happy with me.
Hmm.
So I had to learn how to get comfortable with someone being uncomfortable with me. And in doing so, I then thought about when was the first time I recognized that my behavior made someone uncomfortable? And then I recognized it was in my relationship with my father. But it took my conversation with that coach, her essentially calling me out on what I was expressing as a norm for myself, for me to see it. It brought that awareness, which then allowed me to reprogram that. And then it allowed me to reinvent myself in a way that allowed me to set boundaries, allowed me to be able to advocate for myself in spaces and be okay with how I'm being perceived.
Hmm. Yeah, that spoke heavily to me because here recently I've had similar thoughts or feelings that I was manipulating some situations. Nobody called me out on it like a coach, but because just being aware, it came to me like, am I manipulating this situation? Am I trying to make this the way I want it to be? And you said something so clear to me, allowing yourself to be uncomfortable too, because sometimes I don't want people to be uncomfortable around me or to treat me in a different way. I want to be seen as, because that was my thing too. I understand the people reason. I wanted everybody to like me. Oh, there goes Elmira. She's the likable one. She's this. And now I'm in that mode in these past years, I would say 5 to 10 years. I don't care. And I've been still working on that too, because the latest thing that came up for me is seeking approval. And we can't do that. Why do we do these things? Why are we afraid? That's my next question. Why are we afraid to let these old parts of us die? Is it because it's connected with our identity, or is it because we can't see another version of ourselves or something else, maybe?
I think it's both in part, right? Oftentimes, well, the reason why I think awareness is important is because we can't change what we can't see. I mean, I was a people pleaser up until I was in my late 30s, and I had no awareness of that, right? Until it was called out, until I reflected on it. And I think once I got an understanding of the survival identities, I think I spent a lot of time reflecting on how they were showing up for me and being honest about that. But the other part of that is we are conditioned from very young to self-abandon ourselves. And we're conditioned to keep our parents happy, to keep our teachers happy, to keep our employees happy. We aren't taught how to find happiness within, without that external validation, without that need um, to be accepted and seen by others, right? So part of our survival identities leans into that conditioning, right? Like the perfectionist. We learned early on that someone was unhappy with how we showed up. So we learned how to show up in a perfect way to keep other people happy. Again, that conditioning to keep others around us happy, particularly people of authority, which, for most of our growing lives, that was everybody else. So, you know, it goes hand in hand with the way that we were raised, the way that society handles us as children, and then that becomes who we become as adults because we don't know any different. And it takes someone either calling us out or us getting really, really tired of ourselves to challenge what's going on. If not, it just becomes the way of life for us.
Yeah, I'm just over here chuckling because it's so true. We often go back, and I know you do this in your work too. We got to go back to that child because I'm always talking about my middle name is Maria, and like I call my boyfriend Little T. What would Little T do? Because we have to connect with what was birthed then, which seeds were planted then, was a people pleasing planted then, was a perfectionism planted then, was this seeking approval planted then, where did it come from, where did all of this stem from? And we have to reflect on it and go deep, as we
Mhm,
were saying earlier. Go deep and recognize, okay, oh, that's why I do this, because
mhm,
I didn't feel supported, and I'm speaking to myself right here. I had situations growing up with my father too, because my parents split at the age of when I was 5, and I have 5 siblings. So imagine that. My mom, single mom, raising us. Of course, she had help from other family members and the
mhm.
church and stuff like that. But me and you, rest of you out there as well, understanding, where did this stem from? Where did this come from? And I can see the light bulb that even though you was triggered with that coach, and when she said that's manipulative, a light bulb went off, didn't it?
Mhm. Absolutely. And I think because we're here, I think it's important to mention, right? The majority of our coping skills are learned before we're 7 years old. That is the most formative time of our lives. We learn so much during that time. And I think particularly people who have been traumatized or people who have compounded trauma, if they go back to their coping skills, most of it can be traced back to that early childhood experience and how we were either received by our parents or we were received by the adults that were directly around us. So a lot of times the reason why it looks like it's our personality is we're literally been doing it since we've been knee-high to a
Mm.
grasshopper. And there we just didn't have the awareness of that, right? Which is I think it's so key to be able to unpack what's really going on underneath so that we can get to the core of it. And it's not about changing what happened in the past, but being able to take the lessons and use those lessons to edify us in the present so we can grow beyond what we learned in the past.
You just made me think about something because just today I was watching one of your interviews on this parenting show. You might recall that.
Mhm,
And you brought to mind by speaking of our coping skills are developed before the age of 7. what advice would you give parents who are witnessing their children, whether those children are 7, 8, 9, or they're teenagers, even adult age, with recognizing these things, recognizing these coping skills, assisting their child on their healing journey, or even assisting their child with recognizing some of these things that need to die? What's the parent's role on this path?
First of all, first and foremost, the parents' role is healing. Um, we have to, I'm a parent, we have to be able to selflessly heal so that we can help heal our offspring, right? When we heal ourselves, we heal 8 generations, right? And that's first and foremost, but also being honest with what you see going on with your child, right? Oftentimes we see things early childhood that which we kind of ignore. You see a child withdrawing and you don't pay too much attention to it. Let them go deal with it. As a parent, the best gift that you can give your child is the ability to process their emotions in an honest and healthy way. So when your child is crying, as annoying as it may be, that you've maybe worked 2 jobs or 2 shifts that day, you've come home, cooked dinner, you're tired, your feet hurt, but your child is upset about something, being able to hold space so that they feel seen and heard, being able to process their emotions, because a lot of us learn from young. I know particularly I grew up in a West Indian style household. So it was shut up. Like children should be seen and not heard. I don't want to hear that. And if you're crying, let me give you something to cry about. So I learned to stuff my emotions. I learned not to process my emotions, but being able to be in a space where now I'm able to process my emotions in an authentic way. I also teach my children how to process their emotions in an authentic way, right? I homeschool my kids. And before they learned ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, they learned how to express their emotions. My 2-year-old could tell you that she was frustrated, that she was angry, that she was, irritated with something. And that was key for me because I wanted her to be able to express them from young. She is able to process her emotions, and that is a healthy way for her to learn and develop as she grows. We don't stuff emotions in this house, and I don't think emotions should be stuffed anywhere. A lot of our coping strategies come from a place of not being seen adequately or not being able to stand in our authenticity without it being challenged because it makes somebody else uncomfortable. So I think from a parenting's perspective, giving your child the gift of learning how to process their emotions fully, honestly, without judgment, I think helps with the coping mechanisms.
I find that fascinating. You taught your children about emotions before you went into the alphabet or hey, let's learn some math, let's learn how to tie your shoes, because you giving them what they need. You're actually giving them what they need. A question just dropped into my spirit about, I was like, I gotta ask it. Based on your previous life, what you told me you went through with your father and maybe your mother as well, were you ever afraid to become a mother?
Terrified. Um,
Oh.
what I experienced as a young child, my parents divorced when I was very young. They both remarried. Both of their spouses wanted nothing to do with me. So I was kind of raised in between two parents, like two family units, which I
Mm-hmm.
didn't feel a part of. So I was terrified because I knew that we tend to repeat the patterns that we see, right? Like if I don't challenge what I went through, then I'm going to be that person. And I didn't want to screw up someone's life. I no longer blame my parents, but I think my parents played a very integral role in the suffering that I experienced as I grew up because I was not seen, nor was I protected in the ways that I needed to be protected. And there was part of me that was unsure that I would be able to protect someone in the way that they needed to be protected because I was still on my healing journey. So yeah, terrified. I don't want to screw these girls up at all. And it's a constant battle, like I challenge myself constantly. Am I doing the right thing? Because my role is not ownership. My role is
Mhm.
guidance, and I want to guide them into well-developed adults that have the coping strategies to get through anything traumatic and be able to rebound in ways that doesn't stifle their growth.
Yeah, because you don't want to stifle their growth at all. Now, when it comes to parenting, because you were stating this, you have to constantly work on these things as they age, as they grow, as they mature, get to another level, particularly with you homeschooling them. What's something you dealt with recently that had to die when it comes to parenting?
That's a great question. My 8-year-old is incredibly curious. And her curiosity starts at about 20 to 7 in the morning. And I'm not a morning person at all. And when I say curiosity, I mean it's like question behind question behind question behind question. And there were times where I found myself very short of patience because she would wake me up to ask questions. And I work, crazy hours. I'm always um, low on my sleep. And I would get frustrated and I would express my frustration. I would say, look, Sadie, I am not a morning person. Why are you waking me up to ask me this question?
At
But
7 in
then
the
I,
morning,
as 20
mind
to
you.
7 in the morning, okay? The sun isn't even up yet, girl. Go back in your bed. But I then had to say, I don't want to be the person that stops her from wanting to experience the world in its fullest, right? Like, while I could use an extra wink or two of sleep, maybe I can set boundaries around what this actually looks like. Like if you are going to wake me up 7 o'clock in the morning to ask a question, you can only ask two instead of 15, right? And so I had to adjust me in this to make sure that I allowed her to show up in as her authentic, curious self and continue to be um curious about the world around her because it could have been me, listen, girl, stop waking me up. Like for real, stop. And her processing that is, well, I can't really ask questions, can I? You know? And that's how
Yeah.
children process the world differently from us, right? Because they don't always have the full emotional intelligence, right? But I had to step outside myself and say, this is not about me. This is about her and her view of the world and her curiosity of the world. And my role as her mother is to foster that into something that can help her grow.
I can see her. Like she is me because that's still me. That's why I got a podcast because I like asking questions. But I can literally see her tugging on the bed and question after question after question. And you're like, but it all goes back to what you said was the most challenging part of this journey for you is setting those boundaries. And you
Hmm.
crafted a way to be able to say, maybe I can just allow her to ask two questions and it doesn't have to extend all morning and you need those extra weeks of sleep. She's like going on and on and on and on. It's like,
And
this
on.
is too much. Because I know how those questions go. What? Why? How? What do you
hmm
mean? Oh, then you get the response, and it's like, oh, now I got another question based on how you answer.
She used to make my, I have 50 questions and I've been thinking about it all night. And I'm like, 50 questions? 7 o'clock in the morning? Like, go write them down, my love.
Oh, oh my goodness. She is something else. But you know what? Curiosity is what we need more of in this world, because we have a lot of people dying, and I'm not talking about them dying to their old self. We have a lot of people dying due to division or due to them not understanding, going back to something you alluded to at the beginning of this conversation, the strong Black woman. To me, they're dead inside because they have not explored curiosity. How can I live my life in a different way, still be the best mother, the best wife, the best whoever, the best me, and not wear this trope of these identities and claiming it as my personality? Maybe I need to implement a little play, a little curiosity. This goes back, one of my colleagues, Ian Gibbs Hall, speaks about this. He does DEI work, and he calls this business curiosity architects, because when we are in this healing journey, this spiritual path, you have to play. We can't take all this stuff too seriously. We got to have the curiosity, just like your daughter.
Absolutely. But we are, this is a slight segue, right? From childhood, we are discouraged from daydreaming. We are discouraged from exercising our imagination in its fullness, right? We, from very young, were taught to be practical, were taught to keep it realistic. And in doing so, we shunt our ability to manifest the life that we desire. Because we then shut down our viewpoint. We shut down our creativity. We shut down our ability to think big and audaciously big, which is sad in a way. So curiosity is key in life. Curiosity is what allows us to get delusional about our future. And that's exactly where we want to be. I don't say delusion as if it's a negative thing. We have a lot more control than we are ever given credit for. And when we recognize that, our lives shift dramatically because it allows us to step into ourselves fully and being able to craft our reality in a way that is fully aligned with ourselves at our core value and our goals.
Okay, that's a beautiful way to start to wrap up our chat, because what you stated was about imagination and visualization, and how it's so key to this rebirth, this death and rebirth cycling. It just goes on and on. We need to be able to reimagine, what does the new life look like? What does the new me look like? And if we put a blanket over this imagination, we can't see that,
Mhm.
oh, that was not actually my personality. Oh, that was just my program, and I learned at age 5. Oh, I forgot to imagine. I remember a time when I imagined, and I'm speaking me here as a child, I would sit outside and look at the sky and just for hours imagine places I would go, the clouds, the planes. It would just be insurmountable, the number of things that would come to my imagination. So, Letitia, anything else on that? Anything else on imagination?
Well, I think that's it. We have unpacked a lot in this episode.
Well, when we talking about dying, it forces us to reflect. It forces us to
Absolutely.
really reflect because how can we be reborn if we don't know what we need to kill?
This is true. And to that point, it's about getting honest with ourselves, right? Like we are conditioned to for life to look a certain way. Society has established that, you got a good education, you got a good job, you stay in that job and you work really hard until retirement. And at that point, that's where you start living. And when we get to a point where we see that we are the architects of our own future, when we get to a point where we recognize that we don't have to follow that conveyor belt, we get to decide what life looks like. And once we do the work to get to shed those identities that kind of keep us stuck on that conveyor belt, because again, we're focused on keeping everyone else around us comfortable, and we get anchored in on what we know is good for us, what we know is right for us, what we know we desire at the core. That's when life shifts. That's when we take control. And that's when we stop just surviving and we start thriving in life.
Because you got to plant that anchor. You put that anchor in the water and you say this is or right there near the soil. I know you know about this because you grew up on an island, so you know all about the anchors and the lighthouses and the things.
Yes, yes.
Where can everybody find you, Letitia, to discover your podcast, your work? They may want to get in your community, purchase your book. Tell us more about that.
The best place to start is my website, www.leticiarenefrancis.com, LeticiaReneefrancis.com. There you can get information on my membership, on my Facebook group, Disturbing the Survival Mode, on the podcast, Disrupting Survival or Survival Mode Disrupted, or my book, Survival Mode Exit Plan. And it also has the links to my social media, the links to my YouTube channel, which I stream my podcast Monday through Friday, stories about survival, and what it took to heal beyond survival mode.
Okay, everyone, you all heard it right here on Healing is War. Get in touch with Letitia at LeticiaReneeFrancis.com. She spelled it out. Go there, contact her, listen to the podcast, consult her. She's amazing at moving you past survival mode and into thriving. Remember, your soul is calling you to greatness. You are a soldier. You are ready for war. We will see you next time, and it was a pleasure.
That was a great discussion.
Hold on a second. I'm just going to see if I